This is the tooth of a giant shark, the Megalodon.
Perhaps the biggest find was the jaw of a giant shark.
How can a shark go extinct and yet still be spotted by fishermen in 2023?
We literally don't know very much about the ocean. We only have mapped something like 20% of it. We've only seen something like 1 or 2% of it. There could be things hiding out here that we've never seen before.
Off the Australian coast, a chilling encounter suggests the Megalodon may not be history, but a living nightmare. Seasoned lobster fishermen who've braved countless storms suddenly refuse to go back to sea, claiming they witnessed a ghostly white beast that dwarfed anything they'd ever seen. What could possibly scare these tough ocean veterans so badly that they'd rather lose their livelihood than return to the waters they knew like family? The monster that shook Port Stephens. In 1918, a group of lobster fishermen operating out of Port Stephens, Australia, experienced what could arguably be the most terrifying shark encounter ever recorded. They described a creature that was ghostly white in color and measured somewhere between 115 to 300 feet in length. Now, before you dismiss this as another tall fisherman's tale, consider the context. Port Stephens, nestled along the stunning New South Wales coast, was home to professional crayfish fishermen. These were men who knew these waters like the back of their weathered hands, often following the same fishing grounds their families had worked for generations. The ocean wasn't just their workplace, it was their livelihood, their life. And yet, for several days, these men refused to go to sea. Australian naturalist David Stead recorded the profound fear gripping the outside crayfish men. He noted that they were so terrified they would rather face financial ruin than return to the ocean. Think about that. Men whose entire existence depended on braving the waves suddenly found themselves paralyzed by an unseen horror. What could inspire such bone-deep fear in seasoned fishermen? Stead, a respected naturalist, took their reports seriously and investigated personally. This wasn't hearsay or exaggerated storytelling. These were professional men recounting what they had actually witnessed. And their accounts were remarkably consistent. They described the same terrifying features: a colossal, ghostly white shark, moving with a grace and power that suggested something far beyond any known species. Its sheer size was enough to dwarf anything the fishermen had encountered before, and its appearance left them in a state of near panic. What makes this encounter even more chilling is the uncertainty surrounding it. The creature's description doesn't match any documented species, past or present. Could it have been an albino megalodon, a prehistoric shark thought to have gone extinct millions of years ago? Or perhaps a rare mutation of a great white, magnified to gargantuan proportions? The truth remains a mystery. For the men of Port Stephens, the encounter left a lasting mark. They returned to the sea eventually, but the memory of that ghostly leviathan haunted their imaginations. A silent reminder of how little we truly understand the depths of the ocean. Whether you view it as a glimpse of a prehistoric predator or a tale inflated by fear, one thing is certain: the ocean still holds secrets that can terrify even the most experienced seafarers. The ghostly white leviathan. The creature was described as ghostly white in color and measuring from 115 to 300 feet in length. To put that in perspective, the largest great white sharks typically max out at around 20 feet, while whale sharks, the largest fish in our oceans today, reach about 40 feet. But here's where things get really interesting. The fishermen described a creature with proportions that suggested incredible bulk and power. This was something built like a shark, but scaled up to prehistoric proportions. That ghostly white description keeps popping up in the accounts, and it's worth considering why this detail was so prominent in every witness statement. Great whites are typically gray on top and white underneath. a coloration called countershading that helps them hunt. But a completely white shark? That's something else entirely. Some marine biologists suggest that extreme age in sharks can lead to lighter coloration. Others point to genetic conditions like leucism, which can cause partial loss of pigmentation. Could these fishermen have encountered an ancient, massive shark with unusual coloring? What made this sighting even more unsettling was the creature's behavior. According to the accounts, the creature seemed to be actively investigating the fishing equipment and boats. It displayed curiosity and intelligence that went beyond typical shark behavior. Modern great whites are known to be curious about boats and fishing equipment, but they typically investigate briefly before moving on. This creature reportedly lingered, almost as if it was studying the human activity with deliberate intention. The science behind Megalodon. To understand what these fishermen might have encountered, we need to dive into the prehistoric past. Megalodon fossils have been found across Europe, Africa, the United States of America, and Australia, suggesting that the species occupied all of the oceans except for polar areas. The scientific name Otodus megalodon literally means giant tooth, and these creatures lived up to that name. Paleontologists estimate that megalodons could reach lengths of 50 to 80 feet, with some estimates pushing even higher. Their teeth alone could measure over 7 inches long. Imagine the jaw required to hold dozens of those massive daggers. Here's what makes the Port Stephens incident particularly intriguing. Australia has a rich history with megalodons. Fossil evidence shows these prehistoric giants once patrolled Australian waters millions of years ago. The continental shelf around Australia provided ideal hunting grounds for these massive predators. Could there be isolated populations that survived the supposed extinction? The ocean covers more than 70% of our planet's surface, and we've explored less than 5% of it. There are vast underwater mountain ranges, deep oceanic trenches, and unexplored ecosystems that could theoretically support large marine life. Most scientists agree that megalodons went extinct around 2.6 million years ago, but that timeline keeps shifting as new evidence emerges. Some researchers suggest they might have survived much longer in certain isolated environments. The coelacanth was thought to be extinct for 66 million years, until a living specimen was caught in 1938. The giant squid was considered a mythical creature until 2004, when the first living specimen was photographed. The ocean has a habit of keeping secrets, and some of those secrets are absolutely massive. Modern-day encounters and evidence. Fast forward to modern times, and Australia continues to produce remarkable shark encounters that capture global attention. An enormous great white shark was pictured stalking a fishing boat and tuna farm at Port Lincoln, South Australia, showing these massive predators still patrol Australian waters. In 2024, near Port Stephens, the same location as the 1918 incident, an angler had a stunning encounter with a massive great white shark. "My head couldn't figure out what it was," the fisherman said, "and then it all came into view, and I realized it wasn't a submarine, it wasn't a whale. That's a great white shark. I wasn't prepared for it." These modern encounters show that Australian waters continue to support exceptionally large sharks, and fishermen are still being surprised by creatures that push the boundaries of what they thought possible. In May 2021, a video of a basking shark encounter in the Atlantic went viral on TikTok, with users misidentifying it as a megalodon caught on tape. This shows how modern technology and social media can both help and hinder our understanding of unusual marine encounters. The challenge today is separating genuine unusual sightings from misidentifications, hoaxes, and wishful thinking. But it also means that if a true megalodon encounter occurred, we'd have much better documentation than the fishermen of 1918 could provide. Modern fish finders, sonar equipment, and underwater cameras have revealed incredible details about ocean life. but they've also shown us how much we still don't know. Deep-sea cameras regularly capture footage of unknown species, and marine biologists estimate that up to 80% of ocean species remain undiscovered. Could a population of megalodons hide in the deep ocean trenches around Australia? The Mariana Trench reaches depths of over 36,000 feet. That's deeper than Mount Everest is tall. These abyssal environments remain largely unexplored and could theoretically support large, unknown species. The skeptical analysis. Let's be honest about the challenges with the 1918 Port Stephens story. Critics point out that the reported behavior doesn't match that of whale sharks, and they note that a storm swept through the area shortly before the incident, raising the possibility that the fishermen invented the story to cover their losses from storm damage. This economic incentive theory suggests that vulnerable immigrant workers might have created a monster story to explain destroyed equipment rather than admit to storm damage. It's a practical explanation that addresses the human element of the story. Marine biologists raise several scientific objections to megalodon survival theories. These massive sharks would require enormous amounts of food. We're talking about consuming several tons of prey daily. Such feeding activity would leave clear evidence in the ecosystem. The lack of megalodon teeth washing up on beaches is another significant concern. Sharks continuously shed teeth throughout their lives, and megalodon teeth are virtually indestructible. If populations survived, we should be finding fresh teeth regularly. Ocean conditions can play tricks on even experienced observers. Large objects underwater can appear much bigger due to water magnification and lighting conditions. A group of large great whites, a whale shark, or even debris could potentially be misidentified under the right circumstances. Stress and fear can also influence perception. Once the idea of a massive creature enters people's minds, subsequent sightings might be interpreted through that lens, creating a feedback loop of increasingly dramatic descriptions. The ongoing mystery. Despite skeptical analysis, the Port Stephens incident remains one of the most compelling pieces of anecdotal evidence for megalodon survival. The consistency of witness accounts, the expertise of the observers, and the documented reaction of the fishing community give the story a weight that's hard to dismiss entirely. David Stead took these reports seriously. He wouldn't have documented the incident if he thought it was simply a hoax or mass hysteria. His scientific reputation was built on careful observation and analysis. Consider what we've learned about the ocean in recent decades. Giant tube worms thriving around deep-sea volcanic vents, ecosystems powered by chemosynthesis rather than photosynthesis, and creatures adapted to pressures that would crush surface dwellers. The deep ocean is essentially an alien world right here on our planet. Every year brings new discoveries of large marine species. In 2020, scientists discovered a 150-foot-long siphonophore, the longest creature ever recorded. If something that massive could remain unknown until recently, what else might be lurking in the depths? Australia's unique position, surrounded by vast ocean areas, creates perfect conditions for unusual marine encounters. The continental shelf drops off dramatically in many areas, creating deep water environments close to shore, where large predators could potentially operate. The isolation of Australian waters during certain geological periods might have allowed unique evolutionary paths that differed from other ocean basins. Could a population of megalodons have survived in Australian waters longer than elsewhere? Similar encounters worldwide. Similar incidents to Port Stephens. Reports of massive sharks coming from oceans worldwide. Japanese fishermen have reported encounters with unusually large sharks, while Pacific Island cultures have ancient legends of massive sea predators that closely match megalodon descriptions. Recent reports from Japan describe fishermen finding an unusual juvenile shark tangled in their nets near Funaya-ine, a fishing village on the Japanese coast, with the men claiming they had never seen anything like it before. These cross-cultural reports suggest either a widespread phenomenon or a universal human tendency to interpret unusual marine encounters through the lens of prehistoric monsters. Many of the most compelling megalodon sightings occur near deep-water environments. This pattern makes sense if we consider that any surviving population would likely inhabit the deepest, least explored parts of the ocean, where food sources and hiding places would be most abundant. The Monterey Canyon off California, the Puerto Rico Trench in the Atlantic, and the deep waters off Australia's continental shelf all represent environments that could theoretically support large, unknown species. The persistence of megalodon stories across different cultures and time periods suggests something deeper than simple misidentification. Whether these stories reflect actual encounters, cultural memories of prehistoric times, or archetypal fears of oceanic predators, they clearly tap into something fundamental about our relationship with the sea. What modern science says. The overwhelming scientific consensus maintains that megalodons went extinct millions of years ago. The fossil record shows a clear decline in megalodon teeth around 2.6 million years ago, coinciding with climate changes that affected their preferred prey species. Marine ecosystems today are thoroughly studied through tagging programs, underwater surveys, and continuous monitoring. A population of 50-foot sharks would be extremely difficult to hide from modern marine biology research methods. One of the strongest arguments against megalodon's survival involves the food chain. These creatures would need to consume massive amounts of large prey, primarily whales and other marine mammals. Current whale populations and their migration patterns are well documented, and the kind of predation required to support megalodons would be clearly visible in the data. DNA analysis of seawater samples can detect traces of genetic material from marine species. If megalodons existed in significant numbers, environmental DNA sampling should theoretically detect their presence. So far, no such evidence has been found. Modern technology presents a paradox for megalodon believers. On one hand, we have sophisticated sonar, underwater cameras, and satellite tracking that should make hiding large marine animals nearly impossible. On the other hand, this same technology keeps revealing how little we actually know about deep ocean environments. The psychology of sea monsters. There's something deeply compelling about the idea that prehistoric giants still roam our oceans. Perhaps it's the humbling reminder that humans don't control every environment on Earth. Or maybe it's the thrill of knowing that genuine mysteries still exist in our thoroughly mapped world. The ocean represents the ultimate frontier, vast, dangerous, and largely unexplored. In an age where satellite imagery can show us every corner of land, the sea remains genuinely mysterious. Professional fishermen spend more time on the ocean than almost anyone else. They develop an intimate knowledge of marine life and ocean conditions that few scientists can match. When experienced fishermen report unusual encounters, their observations carry weight precisely because of their expertise. However, fishermen also have a cultural tradition of storytelling that can lead to embellishment over time. The line between accurate observation and engaging narrative can blur, especially when stories are passed down through generations. Sharks occupy a unique place in human psychology. They're simultaneously feared and fascinating. The idea of an even larger, more powerful shark taps into primal fears while also exciting our sense of wonder about the natural world. This psychological duality might explain why megalodon stories persist despite scientific skepticism. They satisfy both our need for mystery and our fear of the unknown predator lurking beneath the waves. The Australian Shark Triangle. What's fascinating about Australian waters is the consistent pattern of unusual shark encounters across different decades. From Port Stephens in the north to the Great Australian Bight in the south, there seems to be a corridor of extraordinary sightings that marine biologists are still trying to understand. This Australian shark triangle stretches along the eastern and southern coasts, encompassing areas where the continental shelf drops dramatically into abyssal depths. These deep water environments create perfect conditions for large marine predators to remain hidden from human observation. In South Australia's Spencer Gulf, local fishermen have reported encounters with massive sharks that dwarf typical great whites. These sightings often occur near tuna farms, where the concentration of fish creates ideal hunting grounds for apex predators. One particularly compelling account describes a shark so large that it caused a tuna farm's underwater cameras to malfunction simply by passing near the equipment. The electromagnetic interference suggested something with unusual bioelectric properties, possibly indicating extreme size or age. Western Australia's Ningaloo Reef has become a hot spot for whale-shark encounters, but local dive operators occasionally report sightings of massive unidentified sharks that don't match known species profiles. These creatures are described as having unusual coloration and behavior patterns that set them apart from documented species. The deep waters off Ningaloo drop to over 4,000 feet, just miles from shore, creating an environment where large, unknown species could theoretically thrive without regular human contact. Fossil evidence and living legends. Australia's fossil record reveals a rich history of massive marine predators.
A diver says it was hard to contain the excitement, though, over the latest find off of the coast of Venice.
She found a massive Megalodon shark tooth.
Beyond megalodons, the continent was once home to giant marine reptiles, enormous rays, and shark species that make modern great whites look like minnows. The Otway Basin in Victoria has yielded some of the most impressive megalodon teeth ever discovered, with some specimens measuring over 7 inches long. These fossils suggest that Australian megalodons may have been even larger than their counterparts in other parts of the world. Indigenous Australian cultures have oral traditions stretching back tens of thousands of years, and many of these stories include references to massive sea creatures that closely match megalodon descriptions. The Yolngu people of northeastern Arnhem Land tell stories of Beru, a giant crocodile-like creature that ruled the ancient seas. These stories often describe encounters with massive predators that were white like bone and longer than many canoes, descriptions that bear striking similarities to the 1918 Port Stephens accounts. Could these ancient stories preserve cultural memories of actual encounters with surviving prehistoric sharks? In Western Australia's remote Kimberley region, pearl divers have reported encounters with massive sharks throughout the 20th century. The isolation of this area and its pristine marine environment make it a prime candidate for supporting unknown or unusual species. Recent scientific expeditions to the Kimberley have discovered new species of marine life regularly, suggesting that this remote corner of Australia still holds biological secrets waiting to be uncovered. The Great White Shark Factor. Australia is already home to some of the largest great white sharks on the planet. The waters around South Australia, particularly near the Neptune Islands, regularly produce great whites exceeding 20 feet in length.
Are very smart animals. They're very powerful, and in some cases, probably even more powerful than a white shark. I think what we're seeing is probably...
Could some of these giants be reaching sizes that approach prehistoric proportions? The famous deep blue, one of the largest great whites ever recorded, was estimated at over 20 feet long and weighed approximately 2.5 tons. If individual great whites can reach such impressive sizes, could exceptional specimens grow even larger under the right conditions? Sharks continue growing throughout their lives, and great whites can live for over 70 years. In the pristine waters around Australia, with abundant food sources and minimal human interference in certain areas, could some great whites be achieving unprecedented ages and sizes? The concept of superadults, sharks that have survived much longer than typical specimens, offers a possible explanation for unusually large sightings that doesn't require the existence of extinct species. Some marine biologists have proposed that unusual shark sightings might represent hybrid specimens, offspring of different large shark species that display characteristics not seen in either parent species. Australia's diverse shark population could potentially produce such hybrids. While shark hybridization is rare, it has been documented in several species. Could the massive pale sharks reported in Australian waters represent hybrid specimens with unique characteristics? The technology revolution. Modern fishing vessels and research ships regularly detect large sonar signatures in Australian waters that don't correspond to known marine life. These anomalies often occur in deep water areas where visual confirmation is impossible. The Royal Australian Navy has reported sonar contacts suggesting marine life far larger than any catalogued species. While many of these contacts are likely whales or schools of fish, some signatures suggest single, massive creatures moving at speeds inconsistent with known marine mammals. Recent advances in underwater photography and video technology have captured images of marine life that continue to surprise researchers. Baited camera systems deployed in deep Australian waters have recorded footage of sharks displaying unusual size and behavior characteristics. One particularly intriguing piece of footage from the Coral Sea shows what appears to be a massive white shark investigating bait at depths of over 1,000 feet. The creature's proportions suggest a size well beyond typical great white parameters. But the footage is too brief and distant for definitive identification. GPS tracking of tagged sharks has revealed migration patterns and behaviors that challenge our understanding of large shark ecology. Some tagged great whites have disappeared from tracking systems in ways that suggest encounters with even larger predators. The sudden disappearance of large, healthy tagged sharks in deep Australian waters raises questions about what predators could be responsible for such events. Could mega-sized sharks be responsible for these mysterious disappearances? The economic impact. The possibility of surviving megalodons has created a unique form of ecotourism in Australia. Shark cage diving operators market the potential for prehistoric encounters while maintaining scientific credibility by focusing on known large species. This tourism industry brings millions of dollars to coastal Australian communities, but it also creates pressure to maintain the mystery. The economic incentive to keep megalodon stories alive sometimes conflicts with scientific accuracy. Commercial fishermen in Australian waters report a complex relationship with the megalodon question. While some embrace the attention it brings to their industry, others worry about the impact on consumer confidence in seafood safety. The fishing industry has also provided some of the most credible reports of unusual encounters, as professional fishermen spend more time on the water than any other group and have extensive experience with marine life identification. Believe it or not, some maritime insurance companies have begun including clauses related to unknown marine megafauna in policies covering Australian waters. While these clauses are largely symbolic, they reflect the ongoing uncertainty about what might be lurking in the deep. The insurance industry's acknowledgement of unknown marine risks demonstrates how seriously some sectors take the possibility of undiscovered large marine life. The climate change factor. Climate change is altering ocean conditions in ways that could potentially affect the distribution and behavior of large marine predators. Rising water temperatures, changing current patterns, and shifting prey distributions might be bringing deep water species into contact with human activities more frequently. Could climate-induced changes be forcing large, previously unknown sharks into shallower waters where they're more likely to encounter humans? This hypothesis could explain the apparent increase in unusual sightings in recent years. As surface waters warm and become more acidic, some large marine species might be retreating to deeper, more stable environments. These deep water refuges could serve as sanctuaries for species thought to be extinct, including potentially surviving megalodons. The deep waters around Australia's continental margins remain relatively stable compared to surface conditions, making them ideal refuges for large, cold water predators. Climate change is also affecting the migration patterns of whales and other large marine mammals that would serve as prey for mega-sized sharks. Changes in prey distribution could bring large predators into contact with human activities in unexpected ways. The recent appearance of unusual whale species in Australian waters might be attracting large predators that normally remain in deeper, more remote areas. The hoax question. The popularity of megalodon stories has unfortunately led to numerous hoaxes and fabricated evidence. Digital manipulation of photographs and videos has made it increasingly difficult to evaluate purported evidence of surviving megalodons. However, dismissing all unusual sightings as hoaxes would be equally problematic. The challenge lies in developing methods to separate genuine anomalous encounters from fabricated stories and misidentifications. Social media has amplified both genuine unusual sightings and obvious hoaxes, making it more difficult for researchers to identify potentially credible reports. The viral nature of shark content means that even obviously fake material can reach millions of viewers. This information pollution makes it harder to investigate potentially genuine encounters, as credible witnesses may be reluctant to report sightings that could be dismissed as social media stunts. Television documentaries about megalodons have often blended scientific information with speculative content, sometimes presenting theories as facts. This approach has both increased public interest and created confusion about what evidence actually exists. The challenge for legitimate researchers is maintaining scientific credibility while acknowledging that some unexplained encounters deserve serious investigation. The conservation angle. Whether or not megalodons still exist, the mystery surrounding them highlights the importance of marine conservation. The possibility of unknown large species underscores how little we know about deep ocean ecosystems and how much we stand to lose through human impact. Conservation efforts focused on protecting large marine predators benefit from the public interest generated by megalodon stories, even if the species itself is extinct. This conservation marketing effect can be a powerful tool for protecting marine environments. Marine conservation often operates under the precautionary principle, protecting ecosystems even when we don't fully understand them. This approach would argue for protecting potential megalodon habitat, even in the absence of definitive proof of survival. The deep water environments where megalodons might theoretically survive are also critical habitat for many known species, making their conservation important regardless of what unknown species might exist. The health of marine ecosystems depends on maintaining populations of apex predators. Whether these predators are known species like great whites or potentially unknown species like surviving megalodons, their conservation is crucial for ecosystem balance. The focus on megalodon possibilities can serve as a gateway to broader discussions about marine predator conservation and the importance of protecting ocean food webs. So what really happened off Port Stephens in 1918? The honest answer is that we'll probably never know for certain. The evidence is compelling enough to rule out simple dismissal, but not strong enough to prove the existence of surviving megalodons. The consistency of witness accounts, the credibility of the investigating naturalist, and the dramatic reaction of the fishing community all suggest that something unusual occurred. Whether that something was a surviving megalodon, an unusually large known species, or a case of mass misidentification remains an open question. However, the ocean continues to surprise us. New species are discovered regularly, and some of them are quite large. The possibility of unknown shark species, perhaps not megalodons, but something unusual, can't be completely ruled out. Whether or not megalodons still exist, stories like the Port Stevens incident serve an important purpose. They remind us that our planet still holds secrets, and that the natural world is far more complex and wonderful than we often assume. These stories also highlight the importance of keeping an open mind while maintaining scientific rigor. The balance between healthy skepticism and genuine curiosity drives both good science and compelling storytelling. Today's Australian waters continue to produce remarkable shark encounters that push the boundaries of what we think is normal. From massive great whites appearing near Port Stevens to unusual behavior patterns observed by fishermen, the mystery of Australian sharks is far from over. Whether these modern encounters represent unusually large individuals of known species, undocumented behaviors, or something more extraordinary, they keep the conversation alive about what might still be lurking in our oceans. From the 1918 Port Stevens fishermen's terrifying account to modern sightings of massive sharks off Australia's coast, one truth endures: the ocean still guards mysteries beyond our full understanding. Though science insists the megalodon vanished millions of years ago, the unexplored depths keep alive both imagination and doubt. The Port Stevens tale is more than a fisherman's legend. It's a reminder of nature's vast complexity, leaving us to wonder whether those men faced a prehistoric survivor, an oversized modern shark, or something else entirely. A question that still fascinates more than a century later. What do you think really happened off the coast of Port Stevens in 1918? Could megalodons still be lurking in the deep waters around Australia?